Hello and welcome to the Literary Lair and to the final video of Alan Alda Month.
This diversified, curious, fascinating, bountiful, beautiful, beautiful world I love.
It's been a fun month, allowing me to talk about my favorite actor. But, like all good things, it must come to an end. And what an end it is. Today is Alan Alda's 80th birthday, and I want to commemorate it. So, as I'm sure you can tell from my outfit, we're gonna be talking about MASH today. MASH is my favorite television show ever. And it's my favorite for many reasons, and Alan Alda is only one of them. But, because it is his birthday, I'm going to count down my favorite MASH episodes, written by Alan Alda. I know it's not entirely fair to talk about an actor squarely in his most well-known role, but MASH was the first thing I ever saw with Alan Alda in it, and I'd have never read Never Have Your Dog Stuffed or watched Glass House or Canadian Bacon if it hadn't been for MASH. So, in a way, it's the perfect way to end the month, going back to where it all began for me. But I will have one ground rule. Goodbye, farewell, and amen is not allowed to be on the list. Why? Well, I want to do a general favorite MASH episodes list one day, and that episode would be on that list as well. And also, it's the finale, so no duh, it's gonna be one of my favorites. I don't need to sing its praises, and I want to have at least some measure of surprise on this list. So, aside from that, all episodes written by him in some part are fair game. Without any further ado, here are my top 11 MASH episodes written by Alan Alda. Number 11, The Long John Flap. This episode is hilarious. The plot is centered around Hawkeye getting a pair of the titular Long Johns from his father for the harsh Korean winter, and then the Long Johns getting passed around the camp in exchange for favors and paying off poker debts. MASH had a lot of episodes about the harsh Korean winter during their 11-year run, but this one will always be my favorite, because of how one pair of Long Johns could drive the entire episode. It has a lot of bits of really good jokes, especially trappers feigning illness in order to initially get the Long Johns from Hawkeye, starting the passing around, and while I won't spoil where they go from there, those Long Johns are probably pretty ripe by the time they eventually get back to Hawkeye. Number 10, The Party. The Party is the season 7 finale, and is one of their best season enders. This is a great episode. The plot is that BJ gets an idea for them to have a reunion meeting sometime after the war ends, but then figures that they can do it earlier, having their family members meet up in the States so that they have people in the same boat as them whose husbands and sons are off playing doctor for MacArthur. The episode is a good character episode because you learn a lot about all the characters' relationships with their families in a very quick way, solely based on their assumptions about how their families would react to the prospect of the party. Obviously, based on what we know, Colonel Potter's wife Mildred, Radar's mother and Uncle Ed, BJ's wife Peg, and Father Mulcahy's sister the sister would totally be up for it. But Hawkeye, Margaret, Winchester, and Klinger aren't too sure about it, with them knowing how their families would react, or how they thought they would react. We'd learn more about Margaret's relationship with her father in Season 9, and more about Hawkeye and Winchester's relationships with their respective fathers in Season 10, but this episode is a good start, showing they don't think that they're the most important thing to their parents. The episode is also hilarious, as BJ is planning this whole party during a bug out, while everyone is focusing on packing and he is passing out pencils and paper to everyone to write letters home. The episode also has a really cool scene where everyone is reading the letters from their families while driving in Jeeps, and they transition throughout the Jeeps through hitting a bump in the road and the camera panning away, and when the camera pans back, they're in the ambulance behind them with the other characters in them. Overall, the episode is amazing, and definitely the type of humor I've come to expect from Alan Alda. Number 9, Inga. This episode is great mainly because of the subject matter. In the episode, a female Swedish surgeon comes to the 407 7th to show them new surgical techniques, and of course Hawkeye makes it his goal to sleep with her. She is unreceptive to that, though, and then during surgery she shows him up, and Hawkeye becomes very angry at her. Not because she's a woman, but just because of how she showed him up. Showing a slightly sexist side of him that was probably not uncommon for doctors in the 50s. It's interesting because Hawkeye was always a little more progressive than the time would call for, going after racists, but apparently can't handle a woman being more knowledgeable than him. Obviously, by the end of the episode, Hawkeye learned his lesson, and the episode is really good. And I'm not the only one to think that, considering that this episode won an Emmy, and during his acceptance of that Emmy, Alan Alda did a cartwheel up to the stage. Number 8, Follies of the Living, Concerns of the Dead. This episode is surreal, and I really like it. The premise is that Klinger gets sick and he starts seeing and communicating with the ghost of a dead soldier, who we get to interact with as he walks around the compound, watching everyone deal with petty squabbles and his friends deal with his death. He even watches BJ and Father Mulcahy go through his personal effects and remembers when he first got some of them. The episode ends on a super surreal note, with the dead soldier walking into the fog with other dead soldiers. It's a really good episode, and while I'll admit it's a format breaker for MASH, those were usually the best episodes of the show. Number 7, Comrades in Arms. A popular trope for a sitcom is to have two characters trapped and have to work at issues, which this episode kind of is. Hawkeye and Margaret are chosen to demonstrate an arterial transplant at the 8063rd, and they head over there, but Margaret is a little on edge, and when they arrive, it turns out that the Chinese and North Koreans got too close, so they bugged out without telling the 407 7th not to send Hawkeye and Margaret. They turn back, but a bomb knocks them off course and the Jeep breaks down, and then gets stolen by some North Koreans, leaving them stranded. Colonel Potter tries to get a search party sent out, but the army is the army, so that doesn't work. Hawkeye gets injured and Margaret helps him, and they talk about her issue. She got a letter from her husband, Lieutenant Colonel Donald Penobscot, which was meant for another woman, and described Margaret the same way Frank would describe her in letters to his wife, naturally angering her. That night, bombs start to fall, and in the hysteria, Margaret and Hawkeye kiss. Margaret thinks it's the beginning of a relationship, but Hawkeye isn't too sure, and eventually they're found by a search party from the 8063rd, who have returned to their rightful place, and they get taken back there to perform their procedure. But Margaret is angry at Hawkeye for not reciprocating her feelings. They return to the 4077th, and Margaret is still angry until she talks it over with Hawkeye and decides to send a letter back to Donald, meant for another man as to give him a taste of his own medicine. And she admits that she knows a relationship with Hawkeye wouldn't work. It's a great character episode, and it's definitely a sign that the show is nothing like the book it was based on. In the book, Major Houlihan is almost never referred to as Margaret, only Hot Lips, and it's nice to see her getting humanized, since even when she kicked Frank to the curb, she was still being used as a punchline sometimes. This is the start of a change for Margaret that wouldn't quite be resolved until next season, when she finally kicks Donald to the curb. Number 6, Fallen Idol. I've already talked about this episode back during my top 15 Scrubs episodes video, but I'll talk about it again. In the episode, Hawkeye has to operate on Radar. After his joking around, has Radar take a jeep to Tokyo, but he gets hit on the way and returned to the camp by ambulance. Hawkeye takes it hard and shows up to surgery drunk because of how crappy he feels and bails on an operation which Radar can't believe Hawkeye would do, and Hawkeye explodes at Radar when he calls him out on it, which of course makes everyone at the camp angry at Hawkeye, because he's the one feeling guilty and he took it out on Radar. Obviously he apologizes and they end up friends at the end, but it's an intense episode. Fun fact, this was my first exposure to Winchester, since the way that the episodes ran, MeTV, where I was watching it at the time, decided to play Winchester's introduction back-to-back in one night, as opposed to splitting this, and we got this directly after Margaret's marriage, and Winchester makes a pretty good first impression that wasn't actually his first impression. Overall, the episode is good, and like a lot of them, a good character piece, especially for Radar, who acts more like an adult and not a boy in this episode. I still like the Scrubs version slightly better, though. Number 5, War of Nerves. Richard Hooker wrote that the surgeons in the MASH hospitals were exposed to extremes of hard work, leisure, tension, boredom, heat, cold, satisfaction, and frustration that most of them had never faced before. Their reaction, individually and collectively, was to cope with the situation and get the job done. The various stresses, however, produced behavior in many of them that, superficially at least, seemed inconsistent with their earlier civilian behavior patterns. Of course, the novel that followed that is quite different than the show we're talking about, but this episode matches that forward pretty perfectly. Tensions are high at the 4077th, and everyone is on everyone's last nerve. Dr. Sidney Friedman shows up, since he was making a house call to the front, and was taken to the camp. And Colonel Potter has everyone use the opportunity to get everything off their chest with a psychiatrist around. Sidney doesn't do much counseling, since all everyone does is talk, but Sidney has other issues. The patient he sent back to the front, whom he was visiting, hates him for sending him there. Even when the patient is about to leave, he still won't give Sidney any comfort, and that makes Sidney despondent. Sidney had previously recommended a bonfire for everyone to burn some stuff to relieve some of the stress, and Father Mulcahy gets Sidney involved, who throws his pants in as the camp sings around the bonfire. This is a great episode because it once again showcases the doctors dealing with stress, but also showcases Sidney dealing with his own problems. Plus, Sidney is my favorite guest star from the show's 11-year run, and any episode with him in it is instantly made better. Number 4, Lend a Hand. Another episode I previously talked about. This is the second and final episode to feature Dr. Borelli as played by Robert Alda. The episode deals with Hawkeye's issues with Dr. Borelli always trying to control him, which by extension is Alda dealing with his father's controlling nature, which he mentions throughout both his autobiographies. The episode is really good, and of the two featuring Dr. Borelli, this one is my favorite. It even features Robert Alda's other son, Anthony, who plays the doctor at Battalion Aid that forces them to work together despite their disagreements. Overall, it's a fantastic episode. Number 3, The Life You Save. This episode is the perfect mix of drama and comedy. Not only do we have an intense main plot where Winchester deals with the existential crisis of death when a sniper's bullet comes within inches of his head, but we also have a funny subplot where Hawkeye tries to find missing trays that the US Army wants to charge him for. The episode is a good one, mainly because it could never have been done with Winchester's predecessor, Frank Burns. Sure, I wouldn't wish death on him, but if this happened to Frank, it would have been played for laughs. Not with Winchester, though, because he's a different and arguably better character. Number 2, Lifetime. This is a fantastic episode. Not only is it one of the episodes whose major focus is on a specific surgery, but it has something amazing in it. This episode shows the difference between Charles and Frank Burns in one scene. During the episode, Hawkeye is trying to save a patient from paralysis and only has 20 minutes to do it. The episode has a neat gimmick with a clock on the bottom of the screen showing how much time is left, and it passes in real time, kind of like 24. The camp is running low on blood, and the patient needs a transfusion, and without hesitation, Winchester, who has the same blood type, immediately volunteers to do it, even though it would mean they'd be down a surgeon. Compare that to the episode Post-Op back in Season 4, where Frank refuses to donate blood because he doesn't want to. The episode has gripping drama, amazing comedy, and it's one of the best episodes that Alan Alda ever wrote for the show. But it's not the best. That is yet to come. And number 1, Dear Sigmund. Yeah, it's another Sydney episode. This one is more about Sydney, though. It's a letter episode, and Sydney is writing a letter to Sigmund Freud, as a way to cope after losing a patient, a boy he thought was getting better, but ended up committing suicide. He goes to the 407-7th to observe and relax after it, trying to feel better, and we get to see the daily routines from the eyes of a semi-outsider. During this, there's a mystery prankster going around the camp, pranking everyone, even Colonel Potter. And of course, it turns out to be the last person you'd expect, BJ. The pranks are hilarious, especially the one that Sydney helps BJ pull on Frank, and it's one of my favorite episodes of the show. One I go back and watch all the time, just because of how amazing it is as an episode. And those were my top 11 MASH episodes written by Alan Alda. Do you agree with my list? Were there any good ones left out? Tell me in the comments below. Those are just my personal favorites, and you're free to disagree with me. Happy birthday, Alan Alda, and I wish you many, many more to come. This month has been great, and I can't wait to see what else 2016 will bring. I'm really happy that I was able to do this because, I'll be honest, this is one of my favorite theme months I've ever done on the show so far. So, thank you for sticking with me for the whole month as I rambled about Alan Alda. And I hope you enjoyed everything about the month as much as I enjoyed making it. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of the Literary Lair, you can hit that subscribe button. And if you have any comments or complaints about the video, you can put those in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, show it to your friends and share it around the internet. And maybe consider supporting the show on Patreon. See you next time for something not related to Alan Alda, probably.